Are you stuck in the productivity cult? I sure have been for most of my life. I want to talk to you in this video about how productivity has become a cult, a religion of its own, and how I've been aiming to escape this cult. And I know it's strong words to call it a cult, but in the last months, I've gone through a pretty rough process of finding myself teetering on the edge of burnout. And this is not the first time, this is probably more like the fourth or fifth time. And in all my previous phases of burnout, I would sort of ram in a head-on course, collision course, into the same wall, and suddenly find myself stuck with symptoms of pretty severe burnout, going, how did I end up in this loop again? And I've been working on this a lot, doing a lot of inner work to figure out what is the deeper layer that is causing this loop of feeling burnt out. Now, to be clear, for me personally, burnout doesn't show up in a way where I hit a wall and then I can't do anything and I'm completely dysfunctional for a while until I get back on my horse. And I also need to say, for people who don't realize this, is that that's not the only way that burnout shows up. A lot of people say like, oh, I'm not burnt out, I'm not depressed, I work 40 hours a week, 60, 80 hours a week, and I do all my stuff, I show up, I'm responsible. And it's just good to know that it's possible to question that. Let's say it like that. For me, I've had phases when I was in like a really heavy freeze triggered state that I could not do anything for maybe a week or so, and I was knocked out, but I would always scramble back to a productive, functional state very soon. And this is also why I've lived in a lot of denial as to how bad my burnout and depressive phases actually were. Because I'm like, hey, I don't have this urge to hide under a blanket and be depressed for multiple months. And, I'm still answering my emails, I'm still showing up, I'm still paying my bills. And yeah, so it's good to know that there's a type of burnout and depression that is not marked by an inability to be functional. Actually, for me personally, burnout and depression are clearly marked by the ability to be functional, even though I'm absolutely dying inside and I'm in a really, really bad state, and I'm still forcing myself to show up in a functional way. And in some ways, this is worse than being completely knocked out for a while, because it has the big downside, the shadow side of being able to fool and to trick yourself into believing that you're still fine because you're still being functional, which also means that there's an identification with being functional and productive that is so strong that releasing that would demand giving up the entire self-concept, which to the psyche is much worse than to just be a little bit less okay and a little bit stressed your entire life. So actual freedom and actual health, happiness, purpose, productivity, like real healthy productivity, would be a result of letting go of the self-concept that identifies with the productivity. And that's incredibly difficult. And this is also why I see productivity as a cult or a religion. Because it's not that we see productivity as an outcome of a healthy way of living and taking good care of yourself and enjoying life. And then there's also some productivity that naturally flows from us living our life in this healthy and balanced way. We actually have learned, or maybe I should speak for myself, I can see now that I have learned to see productivity as the highest attainable thing. And this is also why we can call it a religion. It's like we've taken the divine, God, away from the throne, and on that highest throne we have placed productivity. And there's some ways in which that has shown up in my life. One of them is that I feel that every second of every day has a practical, productive purpose. Something that needs to happen with every second of every day that ticks off a box. And it's become very, almost like violently obvious to me in these last months of being on the brink of burnout, but this time catching myself. Right, so this is the first time, and it's been a few years since I've had this really intense phase of burnout. And yeah, as I said, the way it shows up for me, I'm functional, but I have no bandwidth. I'm not actually enjoying my work, and I have this feeling that every second of every day needs to be filled with doing something productive, accomplishing some type of a task, but actually being unable to accomplish meaningful tasks. And getting stuck in this web of just checking my notifications, looking on social media, checking my emails, answering an email, and just burning up all of my energy, the tiny bit of bandwidth that I have, just to feel like I'm productive, just to get that dopamine hit of, oh, at least I've done something, I've accomplished something. Now I'm a worthy human that can, allow himself to maybe rest a little bit. And that's another big thing. If you're in the cult of productivity, or you're stuck in the compulsion of productivity, is that the only rest that you're getting or giving yourself is the type of rest that allows you to get back to being productive again. And I don't know if you've noticed this in yourself, but I had it pointed out to me very directly by one of my best friends. He said, why don't you go and do something for fun, where you're not taking a break because you feel like you have to recover in order to get back to work? So can you see that big difference where there's just being in the moment, lingering, enjoying the time that you have, or there is, okay, I've got a week of holiday, I have to make sure I tick all of my recovery boxes. I need to rest, I need to sleep, I need to eat well, I need to go on a cool trip, watch a movie, because I have a week before I have to go back to work and be productive yet again. And this is something I can really see, that I have not allowed myself any open time, any I'm looking for the right word, because I'm a Dutch native speaker, as you may have noticed, or you may know. And in Dutch, we actually have some incredible words for lingering, for just existing without anything needing to happen. We have words like broekzakken and lamballen and uitwaaien and stuff like this. Broekzakken literally is a verb version of standing around with your hands in your pocket. And uitwaaien is a verb version of going to a windy place and just standing around in the wind and letting the wind take away all your worries and your doubts and your fears and whatever. So we have great words for this, right? And I can see that I've barely spent any time doing that, because I was in a transactional relationship with life. And this is a big element of the cult or the religion of productivity, the compulsion of productivity, is that we feel like every moment is essentially a currency that can be traded for something. And societally, culturally, we've been so strongly programmed to identify with the results of our actions that every time we do not trade some of our moment or our time for a potential desired reward out of that transaction, that it's not just that we aren't productive in the sense that we don't get the tasks done that we have to do, but that we actually lose our self-concept, our identification, that we don't know who we are if we are not constantly getting confirmation from the outside world. So basically results of the transaction of doing all the productive things that we think we need to do, which solidifies and connects us with our concept, our sense of self. And that's what makes it so difficult to step out of this cult, is that it's not just, oh, let me, take multiple hours in my day to hang around and to stare out the window, do something creative, enjoy myself, whatever. Is that there's this constant anxiety of having to be in a certain way and to be ready to show up in a certain way in order to even feel like we exist. Like, who am I if I'm not being productive? And this is a question that I've been sitting with a lot recently in my meditations and different ceremonies and therapeutic sessions that I've done, because I wanted to get to the root, to the bottom of understanding why I keep getting into the same cycle of working myself half to death. And even proudly, like, this is the funny thing, every single phase that I've had where I would overwork myself to the point of burnout, I still had a sense of pride in it. So yes, I'm burnt out, but look at how much I've accomplished. Look at what I've achieved, what I've built, the community I've built, or the money I've made, or all the stuff that I've been able to show up for in my day-to-day life. Look at that, this is the result. It was all worth it. It was all worth it, me forcing myself and pushing myself and not enjoying every moment, which is, like a God-given blessing, not enjoying the beauty of the flowers in the springtime because I have things to do. And then people go like, yeah, but you can also, there's this meme, get distracted by all the memes that live in my head. There's this meme where you see like this type A person and a type B person, And the type A person is like worrying and stressing and being productive and trying to get everything right. And then the type B person goes, hey man, sometimes you have to stop and enjoy the flowers. And then this type A person goes, yeah, and he finds like a bouquet of flowers or something and like sniffs it like that. And then it holds like an award above his head that says flower sniffing champion, you know. And I'm like, oh man, that used to be me so bad. Right, so it's that identification with that person that has, like, aren't I such a good person for crossing all of my own boundaries just to be productive so that life can give me what I need? So what's really interesting is that I have found that there's very simple ways, simple practices that have allowed me to start to shift out of this hyper fixation, this compulsion of productivity. And the most important one is to just create time where there's nothing planned. So what's interesting is that what I used to do is I would go, oh, so I'm going to meditate. And then meditate was an activity, something that I was doing. And that activity was supposed to yield a certain result, which is calming my mind, so that I could be productive again. So do you see how everything that I did, which had the potential to move me out of that way of being, as compulsory productivity, I then again somehow through the shadow workings of the ego managed to turn into another transaction that I started with life in order to get what I wanted, which was to be rewarded for my productivity. And to be clear, I'm speaking in the I form because I want to make it personal, but this wasn't a conscious or deliberate thing that I was doing. I'm realizing it now, but this was a very subconscious, sort of shadowy thing that I was doing, and it took me a lot of time to get to the awareness that I have now to see what was going on there. All right, so for example, I'll take a day off. Yeah, I'll take a day off, and then I'll get all of these amazing new ideas because the pressure will be off, and then these new ideas I can turn into really cool content that I can post online and bring. See, there we go again. Interesting. So instead of thinking about rest, one thing that really helped me is just changing the word around is play. So instead of resting, because I don't like doing nothing necessarily, but I do love playing. So any activity that is essentially a waste of time, according to the productive way of looking at life, is actually very good for my soul, for my enjoyment of life. So literally stopping and smelling the flowers. And there's no point to it, right? It's a pointlessness. And as a lot of the realizations I've had have been based on this incredible philosopher called Byung-Chul Han. And he talks about an in order to. So the best way for me to shift out of this productive obsession is to do things that don't have an in order to. So for example, I'm going on a walk in order to improve my mental health and to be able to get back to answering my emails again. No, I'm going on a walk in order to absolutely nothing. And it doesn't even have to be a walk, because if 3 steps in, I decide that I'm just going to stand and look at the way clouds move and form, or the way that, flowers are blossoming in spring, then that is the thing that I'm doing. And I found it very difficult to be in the moment like that. But what's been amazing is that, and it feels so paradoxical in my mind, but if I'm saying it out loud now, it's completely logical, that all the things that I've always wanted to improve on and do better at are going so much better because I don't really care about the outcome anymore. And doing something for the sake of doing it without being attached to the results of the outcome sounds so simple, but it's incredibly difficult. I mean, there's a reason why this is one of the first parts of the Bhagavad Gita, which is, one of the most incredible ancient scriptures about how to do life. And actually, in many of the wisdom traditions that have stood the test of time, there's always this clear concept of doing what you do because you do it without being attached to the results and the outcomes of what you're doing. And this is a big practice. It is not easy. I mean, it's easy to say in a sentence, but I have a very difficult time actually doing that. And one other thing that has helped is that I've realized that a lot of life, so when you live in a productive, compulsive mindset, a lot of life becomes a performance, right? So everything you're doing, you are performing at, because you're always checking how well am I doing. This is also what I mentioned in the previous video about self-optimization, if you are tracking your sleep, for example, that can be a great way to improve your sleep quality so that you're better rested and you just live a happier life because you get enough sleep. Sleep is a super essential part of living a healthy life, of course. However, I can see that many times when I was wearing a sleep tracker and I know I'm going to get a sleep score in the morning, I was performing at sleep. If I have a meditation timer, a meditation tracker, or some self-quantified meditation tool that you connect to your brain and whatever, then I'm going to meditate and I'm going to quantify it so that I can see how well I have performed at this. And this is ingrained in every part of life. We're constantly checking what is our performance. You know, how much time have I spent doing this? How well have I spent this time? How many steps have I taken? All of this stuff. And like I said, it has a place, but I'm starting to see that the performative mindset has really destroyed a lot of my happiness and purpose in this life. So now what I'm trying to get to, I don't even know if that's the right word for it. What I am practicing, what I'm applying is a mindset, a way of being that is contemplative. So when I sit down to write, to record content, to speak to an audience, to facilitate a breathing session, I try to find a place inside myself that is silent, that is quiet, that doesn't think, what am I getting out of this? How should I show up? How should I perform in order to make people see that this is cool and interesting, to get the applause, to whatever, you know? But to say, what do I find interesting about this? What do I find fascinating? What sparks my curiosity? And to make any interaction with my work a contemplation. So a deep contemplation where my mind gets to wander off and to linger and to go, isn't it fascinating that we are all here together? We're about to get into a breathing session. What is the most interesting thing that is in my awareness right now? And how can I bring that into the work and make that of service of the work? So now it's no longer about me, it's no longer about achieving anything or getting to a goal, but it's a contemplation. And this is a big thing moving forward in my work from here on, is the big experiment is, how can I turn everything into a contemplation? And if I let go of my productive mindset, can I still be productive? Now, I'm pretty sure I can, I have a good idea that I can, but on a deep visceral level, I don't trust it fully yet. And that's another really interesting part of this, is that as I am getting more and more out of this mindset of productivity, I am more and more capable of cruising on my intuition and accessing a sort of deeper knowing that is beyond the default world with all of its rushed hurriedness, the transient nature of constant information, constant flows and streams of new and more and better and this and that. And that is just connected into, okay, but what is alive right now and what feels like the right thing to do outside of any of the data, the information, the ideas, the plans and the goals. Yeah. So I didn't have a plan for this episode, but this is what I've said so far. I think I'm a good amount of time in. So I want to close this here. And as I said, this is a big part of my work going forward. And I want to share about it, and I will share about it. So if you're interested in these themes, then please do like and subscribe and leave a comment here on YouTube. If you're watching this on YouTube, please leave a comment and let me know how you think about these developments and if there's any questions or themes that arise in you. I've got a lot to say about it, and one thing I'm learning is to try to not say everything in one go. So I'm going to stop it here. Hope to see you very soon. Peace out.